New polling shows that Canadians really like the idea of net zero buildings. And so I'm going to talk to Kevin Lockhart, who is the efficient buildings lead at Efficiency Canada, about new building codes that have been released from the National Research Council and some polling about what Canadians think about those kind of homes. So welcome to the interview, Kevin.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, look, let's start with the building codes. These are national codes. Why is that important?
Well, the building codes are developed at the federal level as a voluntary standard for the provinces and territories to adopt. And these codes are somewhat unique in that they're the first iteration of Canada's national tiered codes. Tiered codes are building codes that start off with a normal base building code and then step upwards in terms of energy efficiency requirements through the tiers. And it's 5 tiers for the National Building Code, which regulates small houses and buildings, and 4 for the National Energy Code for buildings, which is for institutions and commercial buildings and generally large buildings.
So if I understand this correctly, the building codes are actually the purview of the provinces, but the Canadian government has developed these national, like a template, and with 5 levels, well, depending on what you're doing, and the provinces then can pick the levels that work best for them, and then presumably over time they can go from one level and up to the more stringent level. I got that right?
That's correct. And so as mentioned, they're a federal standard, which is adopted by the provinces and territories. And then I guess the regulation is required by the authority having jurisdiction or municipality.
Gotcha. And is this for new building construction only, or does it apply to existing building stock? And if it doesn't, is there anything coming out, any new codes for existing buildings?
Absolutely. There's this is the national model codes that we're talking about today apply only to new buildings, and there's a separate process, the alterations to existing buildings, which is just getting underway and is expected to be ready for adoption by 2025.
Why does it take so long? I understand that these codes were supposed to be released in 2020. So here we are in 2022, 3 years to develop the other codes. It seems like to a layperson, it just seems like a lengthy process.
And it is the process is consensus based, largely made up of the Canadian Commissions on Building and Fire Codes is largely made up of volunteers, about 400 different volunteers that participate. And so partly because it is on a volunteer basis, it takes time to coordinate all the different parties. Also, it is a complex area and does require a lot of technical input as well as feedback from industry and organizations like Efficiency Canada that provide input from an energy efficiency or climate perspective. This iteration of the building codes was also the first tiered building code that Canada has seen, and so developing and putting the codes out for public consultation does take a significant amount of time.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about what Canadians think about these kinds of buildings. Tell us a little bit about the polling data.
Absolutely, and what we saw was that support for changing building codes really so that every new building can be energy efficiency and energy efficient, and at that net zero energy ready standard, which is the building can supply. The building is so energy efficient that it can supply all of its energy needs based on either on-site renewables or off-site clean energy sources, and we saw support across Canada, and really. That Canadians connect the building sector and their homes or their offices or their places of work as tools for climate action as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. 70% of Canadians either strongly support or support making every new building net zero energy ready, and only 4% oppose. You don't often see those kind of numbers, low opposition like that.
And really across party lines as well. Ideology, political ideology doesn't necessarily play a role, and so I think it's a strong signal to governments at all level that that we should use the tiered codes to really accelerate building efficiency. It also paves the way, yes, earlier about other processes for existing buildings. The net zero energy ready codes deal only with energy rather than emissions, but there's also an emissions code now underway as well, also for adoption and implementation by 2025. So moving quickly through these tiers really helps us prepare for the net zero emissions code, and while also getting to our 2030 timeline. The goal of the net zero energy ready codes is to have every new building to that standard in every province and territory by 2030. And so moving upwards through the tiers. So a jurisdiction would adopt all of the tiers, all 4 or 5 tiers, depending on whether it was the NECB or the National Building Code. And then every 3 to 5 years progress through the next level.
Great. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate your insights here. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, and have a great day.